In June 2023, a piercing scream shattered the peaceful night of Lijian town, marking the beginning of a tragedy that would shake all of China. At the scene, the body of a man lay in a pool of blood while the suspect had already fled. He was no stranger, but the very younger brother who once shared deep familial bonds with the victim. Upon deeper investigation, police were shocked to discover that for years, this depraved man had been abusing and humiliating his own sister-in-law. When did this incestuous relationship begin? Was it the direct cause of the murder? Or is there something even more horrifying still hidden? Bone-chilling details will be revealed through evidence, confessions, and the tears of the surviving witness. Don't miss the journey to uncover the truth behind the most disturbing family crime of 2023. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to follow every twist and turn. On the morning of June 22, 2023, just as dawn broke, a scream tore through the calm. "Someone! Help me!" Locals rushed toward the house at the end of the road, where the scream had come from. The door was flung open. A trail of blood stretched from the living room to the backyard, shocking everyone. A middle-aged man lay sprawled on the tile floor, his body covered in stab wounds. Nearby, his wife was collapsed against the wall, wailing uncontrollably. At 7 a.m., the hotline at Lingshan District Police Station rang urgently. A serious crime had been reported in Lijian. A man is dead at his home. There's blood everywhere. The homicide team rushed to the scene. They said nothing, just slipped on gloves, moved past the gathering crowd, eyes focused and tense. The victim's body was found lying on his side next to a tea table in the living room. His eyes were half open. Some of the blood had already dried. Preliminary checks revealed at least 3 fatal wounds, one especially severe near the left chest. There were no signs of struggle or chaos. The tea set remained intact on the table, and the chairs were neatly arranged. It appeared the victim had been attacked off guard, or from behind. The victim was quickly identified as a man surnamed Chu, in his 50s. A farmer, he lived with his wife and younger brother. Forensics arrived shortly after the scene was secured. Blood trails stretched from the chair to a back door. Footprints were blurred, as if someone had tried to wipe them clean with a damp cloth. But under UV light, they still glowed. Silent accusations. No signs of forced entry. Doors and windows were intact, locks untouched. Wallet, phone, jewelry, all remained in place. Robbery was ruled out. Drawers were opened, but not ransacked. The victim's clothes were neatly folded in the bedroom. Police noted, this was not a murder for money. Meanwhile, the victim's wife sat in near total shock. A female officer gently led her to a private area for questioning. Her initial statement was unclear. She could only say, "There was blood everywhere," before fainting. From the household registry, police quickly identified one suspicious name, Chu Tai Gui, the victim's younger brother, who lived in the same house but was now missing. Neighbors were brought in for questioning. All hesitated when Chu Tai Gui's name came up. But faced with the brutality of the case, they agreed to help. Chu Tai Gui had no stable job. He rarely left the house and was known for being extremely withdrawn. Some neighbors revealed they had heard arguments many nights, men shouting, followed by loud crashing noises. In recent weeks, these disturbances became more frequent, though no one knew exactly what was happening inside. Since it was a private family matter, they stayed silent. No one dared ask directly. Based on what had been gathered so far, investigators identified Chu Tai Gui as the prime suspect. But the question now? Where was he? A quick sweep around the house uncovered muddy footprints leading to the backyard, where a hidden trail stretched into a nearby low mountain forest. Lijian is an old rural town. Outside the main roads, surveillance cameras were almost non-existent. The small alleys were blind spots. Tracking the suspect was nearly impossible. The area borders a mountain range, overgrown grass, treacherous slopes. In daylight, you could navigate. But at night, it was a true labyrinth, ideal for a fugitive. Police divided into teams, deployed search dogs, but the damp air and swirling mountain winds dispersed scents, making tracking nearly impossible. The manhunt hit its first wall. 3 hours after the murder, the victim's wife had not recovered. She stayed silent, refused to cooperate, and avoided all questions about the relationship between the two brothers. Police had to work with psychological experts, conducting dozens of soft interrogations to access the fractured memories within her mind. Finally, after being fully isolated and assured of safety, the victim's wife began to reveal the truth she had buried for years. Filled with pain and humiliation, she was from the same village, just a few years younger than Mr. Chu, and had once worked at the local agricultural cooperative. They met during a rare occasion when both were hired to transplant rice in a neighboring district. Mr. Chu was a calm, honest man, not one for sweet words, but his sincerity and diligence won her over. After several interactions, the two began to fall in love. In 2004, they officially became husband and wife and moved into a small 4-room house built by Mr. Chu with over 10 years of labor wages. In the early days of marriage, Mrs. Lei took care of the house, cooking, washing, and growing vegetables. Mr. Chu worked in the fields from early morning to dusk. Life was simple but peaceful. But that peace didn't last long, until Chu Tai Gui, Mr. Chu's younger brother, began eyeing his sister-in-law. She admitted that Chu Tai Gui had assaulted her multiple times, usually when her husband was away. Each time he used threats and even held a knife to her throat to force her silence. She once considered reporting him, but the fear of being distrusted by her husband, ridiculed by society, and labeled immoral by villagers forced her into silence. That silence lasted for years. This is understandable, because in many rural parts of Asia, being judged by public opinion is sometimes worse than descending into hell. 1 month before the murder, the husband, Mr. Chu, began noticing strange signs. After confronting her, he gradually uncovered the horrifying truth happening in his own home. From then on, the conflict between the brothers intensified. They avoided each other, or, if they met, it was only to exchange harsh words, throw things, or fight. After killing his brother, Chu Tai Gui remained calm. He went straight to his room, quietly changed into clean clothes, and used a wet towel to wipe the blood from his hands, the knife, and even the floor. The murder weapon, a dagger, was thrown into a cesspit behind the house. He took a small bag containing a spare knife and dry food, then followed a hidden path behind the house into the western forest. Once the investigation determined the escape direction, a special manhunt operation was launched. Drones were deployed to scan for heat signatures in the forest. At the same time, tracking dogs were released to follow the trail from the crime scene. Though the blood scent had faded in the mountain mist, every movement in the silent woods was exposed. Armed police were divided into 3 groups, each with 6 to 8 members, equipped with thermal scanners, tasers, radios, and topographic maps of the western hills of Lajeng. For more than 8 hours, they trekked through dense forest, crossed streams, climbed steep cliffs, and crawled through narrow ravines just wide enough for one person. Tall weeds, slippery mud from the night rain, every step was a struggle. Near noon, one team discovered an unusual patch of sunken earth on a hidden path near the forest's edge, under low brush and surrounded by tangled roots and decaying leaves. As they approached, they heard rapid, shallow breathing, like that of someone trying to stay completely silent. A commando raised his hand to halt the team. Guns were raised simultaneously. The leaves were pushed aside. Chu Tai Gui was found curled up, clinging tightly to a tree root, as if trying to hang on to life. His clothes were filthy, his face covered in mud, eyes bloodshot, and sweat pouring from his body. He did not resist. His body had completely collapsed after nearly 10 hours of continuous escape with no direction. An officer moved in and restrained him with a zip tie. Chu could only gasp, unable to speak. Chu Tai Gui, born in 1975, was the youngest of 2 brothers in Lajeng. Their mother died early. Their father was strict, but the hidden favoritism of his elder brother had made Chu spoiled from a young age. He was neither skilled nor educated. Early on, he was known in the village for his twisted personality. Introverted, antisocial, muttering to himself and secretly observing others. While his brother worked hard, got married, and built a family, Chu Tai Gui lazed around the house. Jobs came and went. One day a helper, the next day unemployed, never holding anything steady. As they aged, the rift between the brothers grew. The elder was disciplined and principled. Chu Tai Gui was reckless and idle. His inferiority, jealousy, and resentment festered within. When the sister-in-law, a gentle, quiet woman with a soft smile, moved in after marrying the elder brother, a dark corner in Chu Tai Gui's mind awakened. From the very beginning, he no longer saw her as family. Initially, he only watched from afar. But over time, obsession turned into a sick game in his head. He began engineering situations, pretending to fix wiring to look up her dress, brushing his hand accidentally when handing her food, walking past the bathroom when she hadn't locked the door. One rainy afternoon when his brother was out, he walked straight into her room, knife in hand, eyes red. He pinned her down and whispered vile threats. If she screamed, they'd all die. She panicked, fought weakly, then collapsed in tears and terror. From that day, the nightmare repeated, each time more brutal, each time more twisted. And for Chu Tai Gui, her trembling only fueled his madness. Bound by fear, she couldn't speak out. He became the living nightmare in her own home. Every time her husband left, she no longer knew whether she could hold on to her dignity until he returned. That earth-shattering secret was exposed on a May afternoon when the husband, returning home late, heard strange noises from the bedroom. He walked in to find his wife's terrified eyes and a familiar shadow disappearing out the window. He didn't explode right away, unsure of what he had seen. But from that day on, he started secretly observing. He checked her phone, notebook, and started noticing odd signs. His wife's fearful eyes, Chu Tai Gui's unnatural friendliness. One morning, he pretended to leave for work but returned early. Hiding by the window, he saw Chu Tai Gui silently enter his wife's room, carrying a white towel and a small knife. Rage exploded. He charged in, grabbed his brother's collar, and slammed him against the wall. Chu Tai Gui's eyes turned wild. He was no longer the shy brother, but a beast cornered. The two men fought violently, overturning furniture and shattering items. That was the sound neighbors had been hearing all along. For 2 weeks afterward, the house was a ticking time bomb. The husband watched his wife constantly. Chu Tai Gui remained silent, even after being thrown out. On the morning of June 22nd, everything finally exploded. The brothers argued. The elder shouted in fury, "I'll turn you in! You're done hiding!" Chu froze. His face went pale. He feared exposure and public humiliation. With his usual silence, he stepped back, then suddenly turned and sprinted into the kitchen, grabbing a cleaver from the rack. Within seconds, he charged back and attacked. The brother had no time to react. Chu, consumed by savage rage, ended it all. The wife ran in, but faced with such brutality, she was powerless. When it was over, Chu calmly changed clothes, wiped off the blood, and began his escape. From family, from guilt, from everything. 3 weeks later, Jiangxi Intermediate People's Court held an emergency trial. The courtroom was packed, security was tight. On the defendant's bench, Chu appeared in a gray prison uniform, head bowed, hands cuffed. His eyes showed no remorse, only numb emptiness. He confessed everything. Years of silently raping his sister-in-law and murdering his brother out of fear of being exposed. His voice was flat, emotionless. The prosecution presented aggravating circumstances: incest, long-term abuse, psychological torture, and killing a family member to cover up the crime. Legal experts called it inhuman, shattering family ethics and shaking public morality. The victim's wife watched from a separate room. Each word read in court cut deeper into wounds that hadn't healed. After nearly 4 hours, the verdict: death penalty for intentional murder and aggravated rape. Chu was stripped of all civil rights, denied any appeal, and would be executed locally under strict protocol. The courtroom fell silent as the gavel dropped. This was not just a murder. It was an incestuous family tragedy, soaked in psychological horror. A brother who raped his sister-in-law for years and killed his own brother to keep it quiet. The case shook all of Jiangxi and spread like wildfire across Chinese social media, becoming a symbol of domestic horror. It raised alarms about victim silence, the tyranny of honor, and psychological rot hiding behind seemingly normal households. What do you think about this case? Leave a comment below. This video concludes here. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.
On December 7, 2009, in the small town of West Valley City, Utah, USA, a mysterious disappearance occurred. The victim was Susan Powell, a young mother who suddenly vanished without leaving a single trace. The police launched an investigation, but everything was mere speculation. There was no valuable clue. It was as if Susan had simply evaporated into thin air. There were many suspicions involving her father-in-law, Steve, who seemed obsessed with his daughter-in-law's beauty. However, nothing was certain. So where did Susan go? Could she have encountered something dangerous? Subscribe to our channel to explore this story with us. West Valley City, Utah, where the incident occurred, is a small, peaceful town surrounded by valleys and snowy mountains. Although located amid majestic nature, West Valley City is an extremely fast-growing area. New houses are springing up alongside old neighborhoods, creating a contrast between the past and present. This area has become a living choice for many families seeking stability. But now Susan's disappearance has changed everything. The story of a woman who vanished suddenly has left a big question mark in the community. What really happened that night? The main character of our story is Susan Powell. She was born on October 16, 1981, in the state of Washington. Since childhood, she had a relatively comfortable and affluent life. Her family's upbringing helped Susan become a person full of kindness. As she grew older, Susan gradually showed herself to be an outgoing girl, easily striking up conversations with people. Working as a hairstylist gave her the opportunity to meet many people and visit various places, expanding her social circle. In 2000, when she was 19, fate seemed to have arranged for Susan to meet Josh Powell at a church in Washington state. Josh, born on January 20, 1976, was a tall, gentle man with an attractive appearance. In particular, their faith helped them connect with each other. Susan and Josh quickly became close friends, sharing everything in life. Their love blossomed naturally, and shortly after, they became a couple. Their relationship developed quickly. After just 6 months of dating, Josh realized that Susan was someone he might never find again, so he decided to propose to her. And, of course, there was no reason for Susan to refuse. But right from their wedding day in April 2001, Susan began to feel an inexplicable unease. She noticed something unusual when her father-in-law, Stephen Powell, was always by her side with a video camera in hand. Although he said he just wanted to capture family memories, most of his recordings focused on Susan, especially close-up shots of her face. This made Susan feel uncomfortable. When she told Josh about her discomfort, he hesitated a bit but quickly reassured her, saying that his father was just overly excited on their wedding day. The young couple's life was quite happy but didn't last long. In 2002, on the anniversary of their wedding, Susan and Josh started facing financial difficulties. Life became tough, and they couldn't afford their rent. Josh suggested they temporarily move in with his father, Steve, to save on expenses. Although feeling uncomfortable, Susan agreed, hoping that with some effort, everything would eventually stabilize. However, once they moved in, the haunting memories of the wedding resurfaced. Steve continued his strange behavior, making Susan feel uneasy. At first, Susan only noticed Steve's constant gaze following her, but then she began to discover even more disturbing signs. He secretly filmed her at home and even stole underwear from her laundry basket. It didn't stop there. Susan found out that Steve collected trash she had thrown away, sorted it into plastic bags, and labeled them with dates. The most disturbing part was when she took a shower. There were occasional strange sounds, sometimes heavy breathing from someone. This terrified her, and she couldn't feel comfortable living in this house anymore. Susan told Josh about her father-in-law's odd behavior and the strange things she noticed, suggesting they find another place to live. However, Josh was indifferent, saying that she was overthinking things and that her prolonged anxiety might be causing her thoughts to become negative. Susan had no choice but to endure the feeling of insecurity, as the couple's financial situation was still quite limited. If Steve's behavior had happened occasionally, she might have been able to ignore it, but it was happening more and more frequently. She could no longer endure this sickening obsession. Finally, Josh agreed, and the two moved out to live on their own. Susan breathed a sigh of relief, thinking she could escape Steve's obsessive attention. But things were not that simple. Steve could not accept losing the daughter-in-law he was obsessed with. He often visited Susan and Josh's house under the pretense of visiting the grandchildren, but in reality, it was to continue monitoring and obsessing over her. He would even wait outside for hours just to see Susan, in case the couple was out and the house was locked. Perhaps, like me, you too would feel chills down your spine at this man's disturbing behavior. In the summer of 2003, Josh and Susan finally agreed to move to another state to escape family issues. But Steve would not allow that to happen. Knowing that Josh was out one evening, Steve went to Susan's house uninvited. He began a conversation with her, pretending to be caring and concerned. Furthermore, he tried to sit close to her, expressing his longing and affection for her. In such situations, Susan would always choose to change the subject and avoid him. In 2004, after moving to West Valley City, Utah, Susan and Josh put the past behind them and started a new life with the hope of building a happy family. Everything seemed to go quite smoothly. Susan felt immense joy as she welcomed two sons, born in 2005 and 2007. From a young, energetic woman, Susan had now become a devoted mother to two healthy and lovable children. In 2008, Susan began working full-time as a real estate agent, while Josh was unemployed. This could have been the beginning of future cracks in their marriage. Josh became increasingly controlling and possessive. He began managing every expense Susan made, not allowing her the freedom to use the money she earned, and he showed anger when she spent on family necessities. Being unemployed, Josh also began hanging out with friends, no longer focusing on the family as he used to. Running out of money, he started taking loans for his expenses. His debt kept growing until he disclosed that he owed a total of $200,000. The financial burden on the family weighed heavily on Susan's shoulders as she had to both care for the young children and work to pay off the debt. The pressures from family and work began to leave her feeling exhausted. Family life grew increasingly tense. Josh lived extravagantly while controlling all of Susan's spending. Gradually, from a cheerful and positive woman, Susan began to fall into depression, feeling trapped with no way out of her marriage. Following the typical pattern, most couples would be considering divorce at this point, but fate led Susan in a different direction. On December 6, 2009, a Sunday, Susan took her children to church as usual. That afternoon, she welcomed a friend who came over to visit. Everything seemed perfectly normal. But by the morning of December 7, 2009, the teachers at her children's school noticed that her two boys did not arrive as usual. They called Susan but received no response. They also called Josh, but he did not pick up. Sensing something was wrong, the teachers reported the situation to the police. A team of officers was dispatched to Susan's house to check on the situation. When they arrived, they found the house locked from the inside out. During this time, the police received additional calls from Susan's colleagues and friends, all unable to reach her, prompting them to request a welfare check. A sense of unease filled the air, but the police hesitated as there was no justifiable reason to break into the house. However, fearing that something bad had happened, they decided to break down the door to enter. Inside, the police found the house completely empty, with no signs of an accident or struggle. The only thing that raised suspicion was that the family car was missing. After thoroughly examining the house, police found two peculiar details. First, Susan's wallet was neatly placed on the bedroom table, containing all her ID, keys, cash, and credit cards. The second suspicious point was that the living room sofa appeared to have been freshly cleaned, with two fans blowing directly on it, despite no one being home. By 5 p.m., as it grew dark, Josh finally arrived home with the two young children. The police immediately questioned him about Susan's absence, but he calmly responded that he had taken the kids camping and knew nothing about his wife's disappearance. Suspicious, the police took Josh to the station for questioning, while other officers temporarily looked after the children until relatives could arrive. Another team began interviewing neighbors and family friends. The interrogation with Josh began with his bizarre explanation. At around 2 a.m. on December 7th, thinking it was still Sunday, he took the kids camping and didn't realize his mistake until morning. When he woke up at 7 a.m., he realized it was Monday. However, since they were already there, he let the kids play a bit longer before heading home in the afternoon. The police found Josh's story contradictory and absurd. First, no one would take young children camping at 2 a.m. in freezing weather, let alone without any reasonable explanation for Susan's absence. Secondly, Josh had stopped at a car wash on his way back. This was particularly unusual as it was a snowy day and no one would wash their car in such weather. When inspecting Josh's car, the police discovered more strange details. The car was packed with camping gear, but most of it was brand new and unused. Even more surprising was the discovery of Susan's pink mobile phone in Josh's car, raising suspicion that he knew exactly where his wife was. When asked about Susan's phone found in his car, Josh appeared flustered and explained that she had lost it previously, but his answer was unconvincing. During the investigation, the police noticed several scratches on the back of Josh's hand, suggesting he might have been involved in some altercation. When questioning the couple's neighbors, the police heard accounts of Josh's strange behavior before Susan's disappearance. A neighbor reported seeing him running around the house collecting towels and loading them into the washing machine in a peculiar manner. Currently, the available information only raised more suspicions rather than providing substantial evidence for the investigation. The police shifted focus to their 4-year-old son, Charlie. Charlie said that his mother went camping with the family but did not return with them. He also remembered her staying at a place with flowers and crystals. This could have been the place where Susan was kept or worse, buried. However, Charlie was too young to provide further details about the location. As for Josh, he consistently denied any involvement in Susan's disappearance and insisted he had no knowledge of what happened to her. Nevertheless, the police continued to suspect him and seized his car and some household items for further examination. Additionally, while inspecting Susan's safe deposit box at the bank, the police discovered a handwritten letter from her. In it, Susan expressed fear about her deteriorating marriage, writing that if she died, it might not be an accident. Despite this, the investigation seemed to be hitting a dead end, with everything still based on suspicion and Josh remaining the primary suspect. A week after Susan's disappearance, Josh quickly filed paperwork to withdraw funds from her account. This raised further suspicion among the police, as it suggested he may have planned to harm her in advance. Investigating the family's past, the police decided to approach Josh's father, Steve, for additional information. The interrogation was tense, as Steve showed discomfort when Susan was mentioned, insinuating that she was too close to him, even implying that Susan had tempted him. Although this information had not been verified, it further complicated the case. Just as the police were struggling with the investigation, a new lead surfaced. At school during an art lesson, Charlie drew a strange picture depicting a person lying in the trunk of a car. When asked, Charlie said he was drawing his mom sleeping. In the following days, he often drew pictures involving guns and told fragmented stories about his mother. This information from Charlie immediately drew the attention of the police, as it could serve as strong, indirect evidence linking Josh to the disposal of Susan's body. However, this clue was still insufficient for the investigation to make a breakthrough. In January 2010, less than a month after Susan's disappearance, Josh moved in with his father in Washington, abandoning their home in Utah. In 2011, the police received information that Josh's brother, Michael, had sold his Ford to a scrapyard for only $100, a price far below its actual value, which caught the police's attention. When the police located the car a year later, forensic testing still detected traces of human decomposition, which increased suspicions that Michael might have helped Josh dispose of Susan's body. Despite the police's efforts to investigate, monitor, and eavesdrop, Josh left no clear evidence that could lead to his arrest. News of Susan's disappearance continued to spread and became a focal point for the media. In September 2011, following a shocking interview on ABC News with Susan's sister, Utah police learned of Steve's disturbing behavior toward his daughter-in-law. The police immediately obtained a warrant to search Steve's house in Washington, where Josh and his 2 sons were also living at the time. At this residence, investigators found videos showing Steve stalking and secretly recording Susan, both inside and outside the house. Additionally, there were numerous audio recordings with hauntingly detailed descriptions of Susan's body, along with videos showing Steve smelling her underwear. These images sparked a huge public outcry. Furthermore, The police also seized disturbing journal entries Steve had written, detailing instances when Susan complained to Josh, and Josh shared those complaints with him. These were the very details we heard at the beginning of this video. With this evidence, Steve was convicted of violating Susan's privacy and other inappropriate acts, resulting in a 2.5-year prison sentence. The court also immediately revoked Josh's custody of the children and granted custody to Susan's parents. Josh was allowed to see his children twice a week under the supervision of a social worker. February 5, 2012. A fateful day. As scheduled, Josh went to Susan's parents' house to visit his two sons. After picking them up, Josh drove home with the boys, accompanied by a social worker for supervision. Upon reaching the house, Josh opened the door, pushed the social worker out, and then locked the door from the inside. The social worker panicked, banging on the door and shouting for Josh to open it, but he remained silent. Before she could call the police, a massive explosion occurred inside, and flames quickly engulfed the house. By the time firefighters and police arrived, it was too late. The fire, fueled by gasoline, was too intense. All rescue efforts at that point were futile. All 3 people inside had perished, and the remains recovered were almost completely burned to ashes. Susan's parents collapsed in grief upon hearing the news. They couldn't understand why Josh would take his 2 young children with him in death. They were so young. It was then that the police learned Josh had sent farewell emails to some friends and family, transferred $7,000, and named his brother Michael as the beneficiary of his life insurance policy. Nearly a year later, on February 11, 2013, Michael, the man the police suspected might have helped Josh dispose of Susan's body, jumped from a building to his death. All those thought to be connected to the case eventually passed away. Finally, on May 21, 2013, the investigation officially closed with no conclusive results and no definitive evidence was ever found. In the end, the case of Susan Powell's disappearance left an unanswerable void. To this day, Susan's body has not been found, and her case remains one of the most haunting family tragedies in America, reminding us of the value of truth and justice, which sometimes is never fully realized. This concludes our video. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel to follow more cases like this one, as we continue the pursuit of justice for those souls who have yet to find peace.
On March 15, 2013, the Shuishang Police Station in Jiayi County, Taiwan, received an urgent request from the Datong Police in Sanchong to assist in locating a body. This notification stemmed from an anonymous letter sent from Taoyuan. The contents of the letter were clear. In a public restroom 200 meters from the Shuishang Farmers Association, there is a body. Please give it a proper burial, as I am unable to handle the funeral arrangements. The officers at Datong were chilled by the message. Though unsure of its authenticity, they could not take it lightly as it concerned human life. Upon receiving the information, the Shuishang police quickly held a briefing and decided to sweep all public restrooms in the area for clues. After 3 hours of intensive searching, Director Lu Lin discovered a suspicious restroom. Inside, she found a tightly wrapped bundle atop a trash can. Layer by layer, she unwrapped it, slowly revealing the horrific mystery until a human head appeared. This chilling discovery was only the beginning of an unforgiving investigation. Who was the perpetrator? What kind of motive could lead to such a cold-blooded act? Click subscribe to join us as we uncover the dark secrets behind this mystery. Shuishang, Jiayi, where the incident was discovered, is a relatively peaceful and well-developed area of Taiwan. Shuishang Temple, a cultural symbol of the town, is a place where locals often visit to pray and seek peace. However, investigators quickly realized that the town's serene beauty merely masked the terrifying secrets lurking beneath. Besides the human head, the police also found items such as a jacket, t-shirt, shorts, and women's underwear, all seemingly belonging to the victim. Forensics personnel were promptly called to conduct a detailed examination. Based on the size and shape of the head, it appeared to belong to an adult. The head belonged to a woman between the ages of 25 and 50, cut off neatly, and showed signs of being pickled, causing the skin to dry out, wrinkle, and shrink. The thick salt layer on the surface, along with the smell resembling salted meat, indicated that the head had undergone a special preservation process to prevent decay and deter maggots. This made determining the exact time of death challenging due to the effects of pickling. Upon examining the outer coat layer of the bag, police found a note with the words, Sanchong Chen Yuanding. The writing style resembled that of the anonymous letter received by the Sanchong District Police. Forensic results indicated that, based on the clean, precise cut on the head, the perpetrator seemed highly skilled in meat cutting. The head appeared to be semi-thawed before being cut with a sharp blade. To accurately identify the type of blade used, police needed to find the rest of the body for comparison. The plastic bag containing the head became a critical piece of evidence. Police began analyzing fingerprints and DNA on the bag and scrutinized details in the anonymous letter. This might help them build a profile of the suspect and piece together clues. Police also devoted all efforts to trace the letter's origin, hoping that remnants from it might provide crucial leads on the suspect's identity or information on where the remaining body parts were hidden. Although the anonymous letter was sent from Taoyuan City, the stamp on the envelope was from New Taipei City. This immediately raised suspicions that the sender's address was fake, and that this clue was merely a distraction. With the letter investigation stalling, police shifted focus to the name Chen Yuanding found in both the letter and the note in the bag. Starting here, they decided to comb through missing person records to narrow down potential leads. Police discovered 64 people named Chen Yuanding in the missing persons database. However, the reference to Sanchong on the note helped narrow the search to Sanchong District in New Taipei City, where the victim likely resided. After filtering and verifying details, police found a missing person case that matched the victim's age and other characteristics. They immediately contacted the family of the missing woman for identification. An elderly mother and the victim's eldest son promptly arrived at the police station for identification. Although the face on the head was shriveled and wrinkled, making it hard to recognize, the mother identified her daughter by the distinct characteristic of a missing upper tooth. What moved the mother deeply was that the clothes around the head were also ones she had bought for her daughter. These small details helped her confirm the victim's identity, leaving everyone around feeling heavy-hearted. DNA testing confirmed this identification. The unfortunate victim was identified as Chen Yuanding, age 36, a resident of Sanchong, New Taipei City, Taiwan. According to her mother, Yuanding had been missing since late December 2014, when her second son reported that she hadn't returned home. When unable to reach her daughter for days, the mother grew anxious and decided to report it to the police. As for Yuanding, her real name was Chen Shuhui, famed for her beauty since youth, to the point that many brands approached her for advertisements. People were drawn to her appearance, charm, and confident demeanor. Yet life was incomplete for her, as she endured an unhappy marriage that ended in just 4 years due to her husband's infidelity. After the divorce, Yuanding fell into depression and once attempted suicide. Fortunately, she was saved in time, but from that point on, her mental state gradually became unstable, with frequent moments of clarity and confusion. She was deeply mired in pain and despair, seemingly unable to fully recover. There were 5 siblings in the family, but each had their own life concerns, so Yuanding faced a challenging time on her own. Due to her unstable health and inability to work, Yuanding moved back to her hometown a few years ago to live with her second eldest brother, Chen Jiafu, 38, who still lived at home. Her mother had moved to Keelung City to help her eldest son with his business. Jiafu was closest to Yuanding, caring for and helping her through her dark days. Neighbors often saw Yuanding wearing heavy makeup, walking around in nightwear, or provocative outfits. This sight had become so common that it gradually tainted their perception of her. Consequently, her mother changed her name from her original name, Shuhui, to Yuanding in hopes of improving her fortunes. However, not everyone knew this new name, and neighbors continued to call her Ahui, or by nicknames like Little Tiantian or Little Hong, due to her bold style. To support her high spending habits, Yuanding did not hesitate to associate with many men. She frequently received money from her mother and second brother, Yet it wasn't enough to sustain her lavish lifestyle and constant smoking habit. Investigations revealed that Yuanding even sold her body to men around her, including local gangsters and taxi drivers. These relationships only worsened her situation, dragging her further into a dangerous downward spiral. Pieces of Yuanding's complex life began to emerge, leading police to question the men involved with her. Could any of them have had a motive to commit such a horrific crime? The police focused on gathering information from Yuanding's neighbors, hoping to uncover any clues that might lead to a suspect. A neighbor reported that Yuanding once told them that her brother, Chen Jiafu, had harassed her. However, due to Yuanding's erratic mental state, no one truly believed her story. Additionally, according to neighbors in the building, there had been a persistent sewer blockage and a foul stench around the time before Lunar New Year, as if a dead rat were trapped somewhere, with grease and rotten meat bits frequently clogging the drains. The situation got so bad that neighbors called a plumber. They even visited the apartment where Yuanding and her brother lived to remind them, surprised when Chen Jiafu, typically quiet and aloof, eagerly volunteered to unclog the drain himself. Jiafu's unusual enthusiasm puzzled the residents and raised suspicion. This behavior coincided with Yuanding's disappearance, prompting the police to revisit all these details. Questions began to surface among the investigators. Could Chen Jiafu's actions relate to the case? Could Yuanding's previous remarks about her brother have been a warning, one that no one had heeded? Police began noticing irregularities while investigating Chen Jiafu's insurance transactions. They discovered that, since 2011, Jiafu had taken out multiple insurance policies for his sister, Chen Yuanding, with a total value reaching 600,000 TWD. This led investigators to suspect that the case might be part of a sophisticated insurance fraud scheme. Armed with evidence from the insurance policies, Chen Jiafu quickly became the prime suspect in the case. During the investigation, the police also looked into Jiafu's newlywed wife, Liu Mao, 22, a woman from Fujian, China. Liu Mao was beautiful and came from a stable, wealthy family, in contrast to Jiafu, who had a modest background and no stable job. They met in February 2012, and within a few months, Liu Mao decided to marry Jiafu, trusting in the honesty and kindness he projected. However, shortly after their marriage, Jiafu began changing, becoming stingy and irritable. On February 26, 2013, Liu Mao suddenly returned to Fujian for a relative's funeral. When questioned by the police, she initially claimed this reason, but later admitted to having seen what looked like a human head in the fridge and feared that Jiafu would kill her to cover it up, prompting her hasty departure. According to Liu Mao, Jiafu once mentioned living with a sister who was addicted to alcohol and drugs, often saying she was not a good person. When Liu Mao moved to Taiwan at the end of December 2012, she didn't see Yuanding at home. Jiafu claimed his sister had gone missing. Liu Mao recalled that upon her arrival in Taiwan, she noticed a faint stench in the house. However, whenever she attempted to clean it, Jiafu would stop her, blaming it on smoke from outside. She was too afraid of him to go against his wishes. What sent chills down Liu Mao's spine was Jiafu's previous suggestion to take out insurance for her, although they couldn't proceed due to residency permit issues. This now made her suspect that Jiafu might have had similar intentions for her. Digging deeper into Chen Jiafu, investigators uncovered a suspicious detail from his workplace. According to a restaurant staff member, Jiafu had taken a few days off before Lunar New Year and borrowed a kitchen knife from the restaurant, claiming he needed it for family use. When Jiafu returned to work, he brought back a new knife, explaining that the old one had broken. Police sent the new knife to the forensics lab, hoping to find any traces or evidence linked to the case. They believed Jiafu's hurried return of the new knife might be an attempt to cover up traces related to the crime. Simultaneously, handwriting experts meticulously compared Jiafu's handwriting with that on the anonymous letter sent from Taoyuan. Although Jiafu had tried to disguise his writing style, the experts still recognized distinctive habits in his writing, such as his unique stroke marks and letter slant. This finding was a significant breakthrough, confirming Jiafu as the sender of the letter. However, Jiafu's motive remained a major question for investigators. These findings strengthened the police's hypothesis that Jiafu was directly involved in the crime. They now had more evidence to suspect that he had planned and carried out the crime, with the anonymous letter potentially being part of Jiafu's scheme to mislead the investigation. By tracking Chen Jiafu's phone signal, police found that it had pinged in Shuishang Town, Jiayi County, on March 13th, the same place where the mysterious head was discovered. Continuing to examine surveillance footage, police found evidence from 4 a.m. on March 13th. The footage showed Jiafu leaving his home in Sanchong, New Taipei, carrying 3 large black trash bags. By 5 a.m. the same day, Jiafu was seen at New Taipei Station seemingly disguised. He wore a black coat, a wig, sunglasses, and a mask, and the black trash bags had been swapped for a single white bag. The next video, recorded at 10:30 a.m., showed Jiafu arriving in Jiayi County, holding the white plastic bag, walking along the main road in Shuishan Township toward a public restroom near the Matsu Temple. His actions strongly suggested a deliberate intention. A few minutes later, Jiafu left the restroom without the white bag. Police concluded that he disguised himself from the moment he left Sanchong to avoid being recognized while disposing of evidence in Shuishan Township. During questioning, Jiafu denied all accusations, even when police showed him the head and asked if it belonged to his sister, Chen Yuanding. He refused to confirm, only responding that he didn't want to relive the pain. Based on the current evidence, police speculated that the trash bags Jiafu carried might have contained the dismembered body of his sister, Chen Yuanding, and that his apartment was likely the initial crime scene. Police obtained a warrant to search the residence. Upon approval, investigators found a small trace of blood on the handle of a kitchen knife. Barely visible to the naked eye, testing confirmed the blood belonged to Yuanding. Additionally, a dried blood stain was found on the lid of a rice cooker. After about 6 hours of on-site analysis, it was confirmed to be Yuanding's blood. Investigators connected the dots, searching for any other remains to strengthen their case. However, no other remains were found in Jiafu's home, worrying police that most of Yuanding's body had been disposed of. They recalled neighbors' statements about the foul smell and fatty residue in the drains before Lunar New Year, suspecting Jiafu might have ground up the remaining body parts and disposed of them through the plumbing. A thorough inspection of the building's drainage and septic system was conducted, hoping to find traces of the body. Despite an exhaustive search, the passage of time had erased any potential evidence, leaving investigators empty-handed. Nevertheless, the discoveries in Jiafu's apartment and initial blood samples confirmed suspicions of his direct involvement in Yuanding's death. 2 days after finding Chen Yuanding's remains, police issued an arrest warrant for Chen Jiafu. When they took him from his home to the investigation headquarters, a tense crowd of neighbors gathered, demanding justice for the victim. To ensure his safety, they had to place a helmet on Jiafu, anticipating potential attacks from the crowd. At the investigation bureau, Jiafu sat across from detectives, his face eerily calm. He remained completely silent, refusing to answer any questions about Yuanding, showing no remorse or regret. Each time his sister was mentioned, he would only smirk coldly, infuriating and horrifying the investigators. At one point, he pretended to have a seizure right there in the room. In this charade, Jiafu started babbling incoherently, drooling and convulsing, creating a pitiful spectacle, demanding special attention. He repeatedly requested a psychiatric evaluation, leaving investigators both astonished and suspicious of this seizure's authenticity. Observing him closely, experts concluded that Jiafu was entirely sane and alert. He was simply a twisted individual trying to escape justice by feigning illness. Police also discovered another side of Chen Jiafu, a fanatical obsession with actress Zhang Wenchuan. In his home, officers found a notebook filled with disturbing love notes to the actress, even including nude photos of himself with messages calling Zhang Wenchuan his beloved wife. In one particularly horrifying instance, he sent her a stack of tissues stained with bodily fluids, demanding that she never film a kissing scene again. When questioned, he proudly admitted this, showing no shame and even displaying a perverse excitement. Reviewing Chen Jiafu's insurance records, police found that since 2011, he had purchased multiple policies for his sister, with a total coverage amounting to 600,000, TWD, naming himself and his mother as beneficiaries, indicating a high likelihood of an insurance fraud-motivated murder. When questioned about this, Jefu denied all financial allegations, asserting that his monthly income was sufficient and the insurance was just to protect the family. However, in 2012, he had quietly obtained a mental health certificate, citing family history of mental illness to easily access medications, all part of his plan to kill his sister. On the night of December 9, 2012, he prepared by stocking up on black trash bags. That night, when his mother was away, he killed Yuanding after hearing her speak with a client on the phone. In a fit of rage, he killed her and preserved her head with salt to prevent decomposition. This was clearly premeditated, as the clean cuts on her body showed a stable and disturbed mind, fully aware of his actions. The remaining body parts were kept in his home for 3 months, then dismembered on March 12, 13. Jefu wrapped her head in her underwear with the semen of another man to mislead investigators. However, after leaving her head in the restroom and waiting 2 days without discovery, Jefu feared his plan had failed. He realized that if no one found the body, he would have to wait 7 years to claim the insurance when she was officially declared missing, a time frame he found unbearable. This explained why he sent an anonymous letter to the Sanchong police station, guiding them to the crime scene himself. 6 months later, the case went to trial at the Jiayi County Court. In court, Chen Jiafu denied all guilt, feigning paranoia and claiming, "Aliens implanted a chip in my brain." He asserted he was chased by lasers and exhibited bizarre behaviors to simulate insanity. A psychiatric evaluation from National Taiwan University Hospital confirmed that Jiafu was entirely sane, with no signs of mental illness. With conclusive evidence, Jiayi County Court convicted him of murder. The prosecution demanded the death penalty for Chen Jiafu due to the brutal and calculated nature of the crime and insurance fraud. Facing this request, Jiafu's mother tearfully pleaded with the court, "Both are my children. Despite the horror, what else can be done? I asked the judge to spare Jiafu, to give him another chance." On April 30, 2015, the court issued the final verdict. Considering Jiafu's dutifulness to his mother and her heartbreaking loss, with a daughter murdered and potentially losing her only remaining son, the judge sentenced Jiafu to life imprisonment instead of the death penalty. The life sentence, rather than the death penalty, immediately sparked outrage across Taiwan. The public, deeply angered by the sentence, deemed it too lenient for such a heinous crime. The grisly and cruel details of Jiafu's actions fueled societal unrest, raising questions about justice and adequate punishment for such atrocities. The name Yuanding's Cry not only emerged from the horrifying tragedy she endured, but also from the eerie tales surrounding the discovery site of her remains. Locals near the public restroom where Yuanding's head was found occasionally reported hearing the faint sobs of a girl at midnight, despite the area being entirely empty. Many recounted that while walking their dogs near the site, the animals would abruptly stop, growling and barking intensely toward the restroom. Checking revealed no one inside, yet a lingering sense of dread and darkness remained, especially among those familiar with the case. These haunting tales spread, adding a layer of terror to the tragedy for local residents. Yuanding's Cry became a tragic symbol, representing unresolved sorrow and the unquiet spirit of the victim. Locals retell her story as a somber reminder of what transpired, making Yuanding's tale an indelible part of the area's painful history. The video ends here. Thank you for following this chilling story. If you found it captivating, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more thrilling crime stories. See you in the next video.